Eagles. Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Tuesday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports, as we welcome you in and bring you deeper into the offseason as we get closer and closer to the combine, to free agency, and to the NFL draft. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Tuesday morning, brother?
Yeah, a little bit late today. We apologize, but things happen. But we'll give you your 2 hours, so don't worry about that, Birds 365 Nation. I appreciate the patience, but yeah, I mean, officially for me, the page has turned. I'm sure everybody wants to bask in the Super Bowl championship, but Eagles can't afford to, man. Everybody's got the head start, and you know, Howie Roseman knows the key to a good season starts in the offseason, and he's made that correlation. He believes his 3 best off seasons were the 3 Super Bowl teams. So that kind of tells you his belief. So, and it starts with the combine, as you mentioned, the draft and free agency. So a lot of decisions got to be made, a lot of turnover always in the NFL, about 30%. So you can expect that yearly. And that's one of the difficult things about this era versus, I always go back to those 70 teams, the Pittsburgh Steelers, all those great teams of the 70s for people who are historians of the NFL. The difference between those great teams and the great teams now, you could put together a core of people for like a decade, you know, like the Steelers were able to do,
Right,
and have 4 Super Bowl championship teams. You didn't have to worry about free agency and guys leaving. You know, the Eagles win one, and they got to worry about Milton Williams leaving and Zach Bond leaving and Josh Sweat leaving and Mekhi Becton leaving. That's what makes it more difficult now.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And that's all part of the offseason discussions that we will have here on Birds 365 all week long, or all offseason long, Johnny Mac. And, you know, there's 4 free agents are the big ones to talk about right now, but there's a lot more than that, obviously, as we get into the draft and some of that stuff. We'll get some draft experts on here. We'll talk about some roster holes. We'll talk about some restructures, John. I think that's another part of this, is how he's going to be in his bag of tricks and restructuring and all sorts of things. So a lot of stuff to do for this football team, John. And as you mentioned, when you win it all, it makes it a lot harder to do it all.
Yeah, time gets crunched, obviously. You know, the quick turnaround. I saw Josina Anderson was out there saying they should move it back. It seems like the Super Bowl was 10 minutes ago, and it does seem that way for, you know, 2 particular teams, but not for everybody else.
Everybody else feels like they've been waiting.
Yeah. So I don't know how you fix that, but it's just part of it. And Howie says it all the time. You'd rather be in the Eagles' position than anybody else's position. So I don't think they're going to complain about it. They're certainly not going to use it as any excuse. But you know, it is an extra hurdle that when you do have these long seasons,
right?
From the physical perspective too, when you think about guys resting very long season and then they got to come back quickly when, you know, rookie camp starts, mandatory OTAs, mandatory minicamp, things like that.
Yeah, we'll see how it all shakes out, Johnny Mac. Good stuff there, John. As we now prep for what's the upcoming off season here, there's a lot of stuff to do. You mentioned the free agents there, but I want to ask you, where do you see holes on this roster right now as you go into this offseason? There's going to be a big checklist of things that Howie will have on his agenda, but you know, as it sits here today, you got to treat the free agents as if they are free agents and they're not on this team anymore. Where are the biggest holes in your opinion? Where do you think Howie's going to be most focused on addressing so far in this offseason?
Well, I mean, they have the deeper roster in football. I think they proved that. So, you know, again, everything's relative in the NFL. But as you mentioned, there's going to be turnover. Now, at the same time, you can't just assume what you just said and that they're not going to lose everybody. You know, that's not how it works either. So they're going to get some of those players that are currently pending free agents back. There's no question about that. So, you know, it's we're looking at an incomplete picture right now. But certainly, I think it starts up front on the defensive side of the football. We know foundationally what the Eagles are. I think everybody understands that by now. They should. Forget about what I say. Howie says it himself. If everything's even, they're going to go offensive line, defensive front. Bang. That's it. If everything's even, that's where they're going to go. That's where they're going to default to. And when you're picking 30 seconds, and ultimately, I doubt the Eagles will. We know how I doubt they'll stay there. But
Right.
for the purposes of this exercise, when you're picking 32nd in the first round, you're gonna lean to your default setting, and that's probably going to be the best defensive front player on the board at that point. A little bit of an outside best offensive line player potentially if a guy's ranked higher. And there's some always outliers. If somebody they really like falls at a different position, Cooper DeJean would have been that type of guy last.
Right. There's a lot of defensive linemen in this draft, John.
Yeah,
I started to look into the draft. I mean, the players are behind them. We are too. I haven't had a chance to dive into it all yet, but I dove in a little bit last night. I started to do some work. There is a lot of defensive linemen in this draft.
Yeah, and that's why that's also matching up with probably what the Eagles are going to need. So then it clicks. It really clicks. And if I were a betting man, I would bet heavily. If you're just betting positions,
right?
I would bet defensive front at 32. I'd also probably bet he moves before that. But,
yeah, me too. Yeah, I agree.
but if they're forced to stay at 32, it always takes two to tango.
Any names pop out of you that you think might be there? Because there's a lot of guys I like, but I'm having a hard time believing they get down to 32. And
well, I have a hard time
to move up.
I have a hard time believing the edge rushers are going to be there because those guys always get pushed up the board.
Right.
So
like
I
saw somebody mock Jack Sawyer at 32. I'm like, there's no way he falls to 32. At least
that's why. I mean, there's right around, if you look at Jeremiah's guy, Daniel Jeremiah, former Eagles scout, NFL media's lead draft analyst, guy I respect a lot. If you look at his top 50, he's got a bunch of defensive front people in that 25 to 35 range, which you would think, they might be there. But then I'd look at them and I'm like, they're not going to be there because there's certain guys, especially edge rushers, they're getting pushed up the board. So Shamar Stewart, somebody's got ranked 27.
Right.
Texas A&M.
Who was that you said, by the way, that you were looking at?
Daniel Jeremiah.
Oh yeah.
Shamar Stewart, you're not going to be there. No way at 32. Edge rusher. There's a kid from Boston College. I don't want to butcher his name. Donovan Iruaku. And I'm sure that's not even close. But again, edge rushers tend to get pushed up the board. I can't imagine. So I start looking at potentially interior defensive guys. Sometimes they fall a little bit because maybe they're undersized or maybe they're considered run stuffers, maybe two down players. So Derek Harmon's a kid from Oregon. I doubt he's going to be there, but he's a defensive front player in that grouping. Walter Nolan from Ole Miss, another defensive tackle, but he's more of a penetrator. So Eagles are more of a 1.5 gap team.
Right.
I don't know if he's a fit. And then the offensive lineman, Donovan Jackson, two Ohio State kids, Donovan Jackson, Josh Simmons. If they're the best players on the board, they just might take them. So those are some of the early. And then I think tight end might be. If Howie.
Yeah, I agree.
That's what he did last time. That was the Dallas Goedert year. What, 2017, not 2018.
Yeah, 18. Yep.
2018. When Lamar Jackson went 32, the Eagles traded out. They might do that again. And there's a bunch of good tight ends in this draft. So Mason Taylor from LSU's one guy.
Yeah, I like him.
you're not going to get Ty Warren. I know everybody's
No, yeah, no.
You're not getting Ty Warren.
Colston Loveland's a guy that, I mean, I don't know. You probably have to use your first on him or a guy like him, but he's one I like too.
Yeah. But I mean, Jack Sawyer, the guy you bring up, DJ's got him at 40. So who knows? You know, he might.
No, that's pretty low. I saw him a little higher some other spots, but I like Daniel Jeremiah. I'll have to look at what he does.
Yeah, TJ Sanders from South Carolina is another defensive tackle. And he's, potentially going to be there. So those are some of the kids. And then I'll tell you, especially if Slay goes, considering the Eagles and their beliefs, there's a kid from Notre Dame, Benjamin Morrison, who hurt his hip. He was the best cornerback in the country before he got hurt. And if that pushes him down the board, I could see them doing that again.
He's young too. He's like 20 years old, I think.
But I mean, I ultimately I think he's going to go.
Yeah,
I don't believe.
I know exactly what you're talking about. The kid's a good player.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, John, there's something I wanted to ask you about that. Let's just assume for a second that Slay is gone. They going to move Cooper DeJean out there? What do you think right now the contingency plan would be for next year to replace Darius Slay? You make Quinyon CB1? Do you move Cooper to the outside? Do you move up Keely Ringo? Do you elevate? Do you re-sign Isaiah Rodgers? I don't know. I think Cooper DeJean's going to be capable of doing it. I just don't know if they want to move him. I'm sure his agent wants him to move, though.
Yeah, I know. That's a complicated one. I think he can do it. I think there's a lot of people,
he can do it.
Because
I've seen enough from Cooper DeJean to say he can do
it. He's a white guy.
I don't give a shit I don't care if he's fucking purple, John. That dude can play, man.
He's such a good athlete. I just think people are ludicrous with that stuff. I mean, he's a better athlete than 98% of the corners coming out each and every year. Forget about his year. He's just a phenomenal athlete. So I think he could do it. Ultimately, he's so good inside. Do you want to mess with it? I don't know. To me, the hope is, hey, can Keely Ringo do it? We got no real indications this year. Isaiah Rodgers, as you mentioned, I guarantee if they're going to move on from Slay, they're probably going to bring Rodgers back. And that would be to me, it would be your stopgap. You would start with Mitchell and Rodgers outside, DeJean inside. And if it doesn't work out, you can manipulate things from there. But they have a lot of options. So, I mean, those are two pretty good options from a ceiling standpoint. And Ringo and Rodgers. And then Cooper can move outside. Then, maybe you double
Ringo
down.
hasn't showed much, John.
Well, he hasn't played. So, I mean, he lost sort of the cornerback 3 job to Isaiah Rodgers, which is, is that a bad thing? Isaiah played pretty well. The issue with Isaiah Rodgers, can he hold up as a full-time corner? A lot of size issues there. And there's a big difference from playing 300 something snaps to 1,000.
Right.
And so there would be some concerns there, but it's really difficult. If somebody can be underrated in the Hall of Famer, that's Darius Slay. I mean, I think he's a Hall of Fame player. He's certainly a borderline Hall of Fame player. I think ultimately he's going to go in. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. And I don't know. I get the feeling like people in Philadelphia are like, I mean, it's going to be difficult to replace Darius Slay.
No doubt about it. It's going to be difficult. And by the way, I just want, John, for the benefit of the conversation and elevating the conversation, as you always say, there's a lot of people in the chat who say they love DeJean in the nickel. And I understand that, by the way. I'm with you guys. I understand. I love Cooper in the slot as well. Close to the ball, can make plays, great tackler. I understand, but it's a very complicated business move with Cooper DeJean. And if you could elaborate on that a little bit, John, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, outside corners get paid more.
Yeah.
So to Zander's point, I mean, yeah, it's nice. Unfortunately, the business part of it comes in, and that's part of it. And he's still young enough to certainly where it's not going to matter. I don't think you have to force it this year. But ultimately, I think he's going to play outside corner because of two reasons. One, he can. I don't think there's any doubt about it. And two, it's just the reality of the situation. Yeah, sometimes business does come into it.
Right.
And he does have an agent who will be advising him. He can pretend it doesn't exist, but it exists. And unfortunately, the NFL does some stupid shit. I say it all the time. You should pay good players no matter where they play.
Right. That's so true.
But they don't. So, and we talk about, a lot of people say, why do guys go for sacks? Because they get paid for sacks. So, you have defensive coaches.
Yeah, just ask Bryce Huff. I went out and got 10 sacks, picked up $51 million.
I didn't say that wasn't to shit on Bryce Huff.
No, I know. That was me thing. That was not you thing. That was me thing.
What I'm saying is, and then you get to camp and defensive guys. Well, you got to be disciplined. You can't freelance. You got to keep the quarterback in the pocket, especially dual threats. And it's like, and a guy sitting there. Then you have incentives, and everybody's got these incentives to go. Well, if you get 15 sacks, you get an extra 5. The NFL's stupid with that stuff. They really are. And when you think about nickel and diming it, as opposed to eliminating a distraction by saying, all right, you're gonna get an extra $500,000 for making the playoffs, or an extra $500,000, make it a team goal. And people do that as well, but there's far too many individual goals from a business standpoint, and that affects team play. And the bottom line is outside corners make more money than nickel corners. Significantly more money.
A lot more, to the point where his agent's going to say, I wouldn't even let them play you at nickel again. But, look, I get it. Everybody wants to,
Second year, I don't think it's going to be an issue this year. But as you go forward, it's going to be an issue.
Well, the reason I think it could be an issue this year is because if Slay is gone, the Eagles are looking to replace Slay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess you could hypothetically have a stopgap, like you said, and then move Cooper DeJean out there. But, if I'm Cooper DeJean's agent, I'm saying, brother, you're a Hall of Fame cornerbacks retiring. Go and fucking take that job. And that's $100 million payday in 3 years.
And then there's not a lot of people that do this, but there are a few. And Cooper's smart enough from a football IQ standpoint to play outside and then move inside when you need a nickel. So he could do both, and they could do it that way. Now the Eagles,
I really wish players were paid on player value, not positional value, because Saquon Barkley is another great example of it, right? He makes running back money, but his value is greater to the Eagles than most wide receivers are, but he'll never get paid like that.
No. Well, and perfect example this year is Zach Bond and Milton Williams.
Yeah,
now, Zach Bond's, 5th in Defensive Player of the Year voting. He was the best player on the Eagles defense.
Right.
Milton Williams would get more money. He's just getting more money.
Yeah, we got to talk about them too, those free agents again, because boy, there's some funny numbers floating around there, John.
Well, I don't pay much attention to them, but yeah, I mean, I've seen some really low numbers for Zach Bond. I mean, really
Milton
low
too.
numbers.
I mean, I've seen some crazy low numbers. Now, Milton, I think you're way right, where people are going to bet on that young player as a defensive lineman, but I don't know. I mean, if some of those values fall a little bit lower,
well, of course,
potentially. I mean,
of course. And hey, I don't know what numbers you're talking about. Now, I saw.
I was using Spot Track, but I also heard from Cilio yesterday, who reaches out to his friends inside some organizations, and some of the guys he's close with, which I'm not going to name the names of who they are, but they are people who work in that department of football teams, and they're like, some of these numbers that people are talking about, Zach Bond, $20 million. No, he's not worth that.
no.
Yeah. So I mean,
No offense, but they don't understand what they're talking about. I don't know who you're talking about, but Brad Spielberger used to do this show a lot. Now he can't because he works for an agency, but he was phenomenal at
so
sort
good.
of contract predictions. He was unbelievable.
Yeah, I remember it. We had him on the show, and he was almost to a freaking T on like everybody.
And he used to do it for PFF. So I mean, they're probably the best as far as projected contracts. Because Jason Fitzpatrick helps them out as well, who's the over the cap guy. They're very good. Look at over the cap before you look at Spotrac. I'll tell you that right off the bat. But
Yeah.
So I was just looking at them. They have Milton at right where I think 3 years, 21 million a year, 37.5 million guaranteed, 63 million total. Now, I think he'd like to get to 4. I think he could get to 4, but the key is the average annual value. I got him at 20 to 23 million. They got him at 21 million. That falls right in that category. Zach, they're a little bit lower on Zach than I would think. So I think that's a positive for the Eagles. They have him at 3 years, 13.33 million per year. So that's 40 million total, 26.5 million guaranteed.
Right.
If that's the case, I think that's a break for the Eagles. I got them at about 15, which isn't that far off, and then the toughest one I said, I don't know where Mekhi Becton's going to go. They have him 3 years, 27. So 9 million a year, 17 million guaranteed. That's doable. Again, there's so many injury concerns. Do you want to play him at tackle?
Right.
That's a guard contract to me. So that would help the Eagles.
That's a good guard contract. I mean, Landon Dickerson makes what, 20 million?
Yeah, it's a good guard, but it's a guard contract. And then Josh Sweat, they got it 3 years, 18 million a year. So 54 total.
Right. Which I think is right on the number. I think that's right where he's going to get.
To me, that's tough to keep Josh Sweat at.
Yeah, I agree.
So to me, can you get Milton done at 21 million a year? Do you want to get Milton done at 21 million a year? I want to get Milton done, but the Eagles, again, Howie looks at things in 3-year increments. So he's already thinking about, what are we going to have to pay Jalen Carter? What are we going to pay Jordan Davis? Do we want to pay, in a lot of ways, this is, do you want Jordan Davis back or do you want Milton Williams back?
I'd rather have Milton Williams, but I understand that that's complex because they play different positions and they do different things for the line, where Moro Jomo could essentially replace, maybe not to the same level, but he can play Milton's position, correct? He can't play Jordan Davis.
Yeah, exactly. But Jordan Davis, the way the Eagles played this year, didn't play a whole heck of a lot.
Right.
So these are all decisions, difficult decisions you have to make. But those are if Milton doesn't get 20 million a year, and people can mark this all they want, I will be stunned.
Yeah, I agree.
So I don't know what numbers other people have. Zach Berman, who I love, had him at, was talking about Draymond Jones's contract, which is like 15, 16. I'm like, that's it. The Eagles are bringing him back.
Right.
That to me is not going to happen, but we'll see. I mean,
yeah, he's an interesting one, because he was, I don't want to say he was a rotational piece, but he wasn't like your star of that defense. He was a great player, but it's going to be interesting to see how other teams value him, playing next to,
well, and I just say
in that D line.
And teams there's a lot of, I joke all the time, and it's not a joke because I think the Eagles pretty much beat half of the league before they ever take the field, just by the way they conduct their business.
Yeah, right.
If that makes sense. But teams are getting smart. There aren't as many flat out dumb teams. So maybe people do recognize, well, yeah, Milton had a great year, but Jalen Carter's there and everybody's worried about Jalen Carter. And everybody's the attention is on Jalen Carter. So maybe people recognize that, and Jalen Carter's not going to be coming over with Milton Williams. Milton's not much of a run stuffer, very Javon Hargrave-ish type player, to be honest. Similar type player, but you saw what Javon got. I mean, people pay pass rushers. And for all the talk about Jalen, Milton was ranked higher. Eagles defense was unbelievable, by the way. Their interior defensive lineman by PFF. Milton was 14th. Jalen was 18th. Jordan Davis was 20th. Moro Jomo was 22nd. That's fucking unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's fucking unbelievable. But to your point about who played the most, obviously Jalen was way out in front. He played over 1,000 snaps. Milton was second, though. 653, way over Moro Jomo was actually third, 490. Jordan Davis was fourth, 444. Because the Eagles didn't play a lot of five-man fronts in the second half. So, because they didn't have to.
Right.
But that's a player, Jordan Davis, that if you don't have, you're going to notice it really freaking quickly. Because if you need it and you don't have it, it becomes an issue.
Today, I believe, John, correct me if I'm wrong, today is the day where you can start to franchise tag players. Is that right? Yeah. So I don't think the Eagles will be in any of those discussions.
Do not use the franchise tag.
What I'm saying is, I do wonder. Like, let's just assume Josh Sweat is gone for a second, which I think is probably likely at this point. I don't think Howie's just going to replace that through the draft. I think he's going to try and get a name in here. I think he's going to want a better player to come in here, not a project that you take in the draft. I'm sure he's going to do that too, but is there a trade option? Is there a player like that Howie would make a move for? I don't really see many free agents, John. I mean, I don't see many free agents. So.
I haven't really delved into the free agents
Not
yet,
great.
to be honest.
I'll tell you that.
But there's always a guy. I would look at a 24, 25-year-old guy.
There's not many of them.
Coming off his sprint. No, I mean, he might not have played that the Eagles see a ceiling in, that maybe hasn't gotten an opportunity elsewhere, or that or the splash route, which is Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, that type of player, which is more unlikely, I would say. But everybody's going to be hyper focused on Myles until something happens with him. But yeah, I wouldn't, and I'll look it up in the break when we go to break. But I mean, there's got to be somebody,
Well, there's some guys. I mean, there's like Dante Fowler. You can get like Omeni.
I wouldn't look at the older guys. That's one of the things. Look, guys, I get the big name trap, and I say this every year. I already got the Raheem Mostert talk. Could the Eagles bring in Raheem? He's going to be 33 in April. I mean, I get you heard of him.
Oh, Johnny Mac.
I mean, focus on guys coming off their first contract, their rookie contract is how I would describe it. And maybe they're not proven now, but maybe the Eagles see something in them. But I will say,
not many of those guys, John. I'm looking.
No, I'm of PFF's top 100, Josh Sweat's the only edge rusher.
Yeah, I mean. Holy shit. I mean, there's Azeez Ojulari, who's
there's a player the Eagles like. There's a perfect example, though.
There you go.
They liked him coming out.
Then there's Ayo Odeingbo from Indianapolis. He's
there
25.
You go. Make my life more difficult.
Joseph Osai from the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, there's for the younger guys. I mean, there's not many of them.
Azeez Ojulari is 24.
Yeah,
I'm glad you brought him up. I mean, he's going to be 25 in June. That right there, that might be the guy.
There you go, baby.
I mean, they liked him coming out. He's a freaking Georgia guy. You take him away from not that the Giants, but you take another guy away from the Giants.
And
there you go. That's a good name.
Money for a guy like that, $8 million.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, you're not going to break the bank. It's not Bryce Huff level. So, I mean, a little bit undersized. So, how many undersized guys you want? That could. I'm not. I'm just spitballing here, but
yeah, no,
that's the exact guy I'm talking about, though. From
someone like that, right?
25, hasn't played a ton, has some upside. Eagles liked him coming out in the draft. Tremendous athlete, so they like that part of it. That's what you're trying to do in free agency, not bringing Raheem Mostert to back up Saquon Barkley.
What do you think they're going to do at running back? I think they're going to bring somebody in. Obviously, with Kenny Gainwell probably out the door.
Yeah, I mean, Will Shipley's the guy right off the bat. They drafted him to sort of replace Kenny as the running back too, so he'll just take the step up. But yeah, you still need Ty Davis-Price is a guy on the practice squad all year. Former third-round pick of San Francisco. I broke my own rule. He might get a chance. He's got to catch the ball better, though.
That's a tough rule to break, by the way, that your rule that you just broke. It's a tough one to not break.
I know. Well, because so many people do it.
Well, I'm just
saying. In other words, he's Ojulari.
Way to say he's not a rookie. He's drafted in the third.
He was a 2021 second-round selection.
Right. You can use the year, but if
he's not,
it's hard.
I'm just saying that's my editor out. Like if you're writing about it, it's not that big of a deal when you're talking about it. But if you're writing about it, and like if somebody wants to write about the Eagles, because I get so many people, that's one of the things that drives me crazy as an editor. He's not a former second-round pick. He's a second-round pick. I'm talking about Azeez Ojulari. We were just talking about. He was a 2021 second-round pick. It's just a pet peeve of mine.
No,
a good editor, is going to murder you for that. I'll tell you that right now.
Well, that's good to know, but I will say it is tough to break because it just makes sense that if you're not talking about a rookie, you say former. But I get where you're coming from. Once you're a second-round pick, you're always a second-round pick. So I understand. All right, John. Look, a lot of interesting things here in the offseason. There's not that many free agents, at least I don't think so. Now, Howie will be a player on some of them, I'm sure, but we'll see what they end up doing on some of them, John. I mean, I told you around, I was looking at some of those average annual values, and we just kind of talked about some of them. If those average annual values for Zach Bond are correct, I feel like Zach Bond's going to be back. 12 million,
I've always felt he's going to be back. I mean, I think Howie knows he needs to bring him back. I'm not even concerned about Zach Bond.
Yeah, but Howie can't stop the Jaguars coming in with 20 million.
Well, he can if he signs him before. I think there's on both sides. I think, Zach realizes what this organization did for him. So I think that's part of it. I would be stunned if he gets to March 12th and is a free agent. If he gets to March 12th, yeah, the Eagles might be in a little trouble. But I don't think that's going to happen.
It's 22 days away, everybody. 22 days away from the NFL start of free agency. We are 9 days away from the NFL Combine, and we are 65 days away from the NFL Draft. So a lot of excitement, John. I love this time of the year when you're got the shaking and baking and the moving and the drafting and the free agents and all these things. So a lot of stuff. We'll see what the Eagles end up doing on a lot of these things, but definitely a lot of questions, especially for a Super Bowl football team.
Yeah, there always is, though. I mean, there's less questions for the Eagles than anybody else.
Yeah, and the good thing is, even all the people I talk about, you look around and you're like, this core is still very much intact and on both sides of the ball. I mean, there's a couple guys you want to get signed, but offense, we all know where the offense stands. I mean, everybody's under contract there except for one guard, basically, and a backup running back. And then you're looking at the defense, and yeah, you got Bond, you got Milton, you got Sweat, you got some guys, but you still have Jordan, you still have Jalen Carter, you still have Nolan Smith, you still have the entire secondary under contract. You got your 2 rookie cornerbacks who played unbelievable this year. You got all the core pieces that you need to build around. So Eagles are still in really good shape, but they do have some pieces to fill in, and we'll see how they do it.
Yeah, and that's Howie's job, and so I think that's why everybody's pretty comfortable. The Eagles have one of the better GMs in the NFL, to say the least, and none of this is unique. You look at some of the other teams and some of the decisions they have to make, and they're far more pressing and far more difficult than the Eagles. So, you talk about Slay. If you lose Slay, if you have to lose Slay, and something's got to be done if you want to keep them. The fact that you say, well, what are you going to do? The fact that you have multiple options, you can play Cooper outside. Maybe Ringo takes a step forward. Maybe you bring back Isaiah Rodgers on a 2-year deal. He's another guy who's going to show loyalty to this organization from taking a chance on him when nobody else would. They how many times do I say how he's good at the contingencies on the show? He's got a bunch of contingencies.
Yeah,
He's
good at contingencies, no doubt about it. We'll see how it all plays out. Let's go to our super chat here. Sasha, appreciate it. Any super chats on the off season, we'll be taking it. I'll ask Johnny Mack your questions. So appreciate you, Sasha. Appreciate everybody listening right now. Don't forget to hit that like button. We've been slacking on the likes. Let's get that like button up. We appreciate all you guys for being here. Good stuff this morning on Bird 365. Sasha R says, how much do you believe having Stout makes signing Zach a higher priority than Becton due to the fact that he has longer resume developing solid O-lines? No disrespect to Vic, since he also put Zach where he shined. It's a fair question.
Well, Zach's just better. Zach's a higher priority because Zach's better.
Bigger impact.
He's a playmaking machine.
Yeah, he is.
It has nothing to do with Stoutland or Big.
Yeah, but Howard doesn't sign linebackers, John. So he's going out of his way too.
Yeah, but he's never had a linebacker like this. If he lets him walk, I'll entertain that. For years I said, well, and the Eagles aren't going to draft a running back. The Eagles aren't going to. I said, well, they do have outliers, because I knew the outliers. Now, I had never heard about outliers at linebacker. So this is the outlier at linebacker. He proved it on the field.
Right.
Now, if he does and says, you know what, it's too expensive, I'm going to let him walk, then I'm going to be on here that morning ripping him to high hell. Say, yeah, look, you just saw the impact he had on this team. You just saw it.
Right.
There's no projection. There's no evaluation. You saw it. This is the outlier. So I don't care about what happened in the past. They wouldn't take a running back. They wouldn't take a running back. They wouldn't take a running back. They would have taken McCaffrey. They would have taken Bijan a little bit later. They always had outliers. Turns out Saquon was an outlier in their mindset, and they were correct about that.
Yep.
If he sees what he saw with Zach Bond and he doesn't sign him, yeah, then he's got a block. But the fact that you're not taking a linebacker at 25 or Patrick Queen, I know Jody was a big Patrick Queen. All right, Patrick Queen can go, sail a boat. He's a good player, but who cares? Not a difference maker. You just saw a difference maker at linebacker. You saw Fred Warner. You saw, to be honest, he was even better than Roquan.
Yeah, he was.
The only guy I put in the same category is Fred Warner. That's it.
Now,
this guy's an outlier.
John, here's the other thing, though, that's going to be in Howie's mind. There's a term you always use here on the show, a regression to the mean. That was the first year that Zach Baun's ever done anything like that. Now, it's the first year he's been put in that position, but how much does that impact the contract? It's a one-year guy, you know. You signed Roquan Smith, you've been seeing it for
Well, I
4
think it
years. You
impacts it
signed Fred
from
Warner, it's a career. I mean, Zach Baun's got one great year. John, last offseason, you used to say something, and I 100% agreed with you. Howie has devalued the linebackers too much. It's not, the pendulum has shifted. It's gotten too much. We came into the year with a hopeful third-round player in Nakobe Dean, the hype of Devin White, and the hype of Zach Baun, which before he was Zach Baun was
there was no hype.
there was no hype.
There was no hype.
You know, I don't know how much does that factor into it.
Well, it's factoring as you see some of the things. I mean, you know, if Zach's getting $13 million, $13.33 million, it's because he's only done it for 1 year. So that'll factor in on to the Eagles' advantage, if anything. As far as him regressing to the mean, yeah, do I expect him to have this type of year next year? No, to be honest. But I don't think he's going to become a bad player. You know, one of the things he's only done it, well, he never played. There's two part of it. He never played the position before.
Right.
He was never given the opportunity. Sometimes guys just need an opportunity. Everything he showed from athleticism to football IQ translates to this is a good player. You know, this is not a guy who's going to turn into a bad player. You don't turn into the 5th best defensive player in football, and he's probably better than that, to be honest. Probably should have been higher. I think I had him 3rd, but I forget. You don't turn into that player just by mistake. And the consistency. This is not splash play 1 week, 4 bad weeks, splash play. This isn't. He made a ton of splash plays, and often, you know, C.J. Gardner-Johnson his first time here. Like, C.J. was a lot better this year than he was in 2022 because he was more consistent. But most people would probably tell you he was better in 2022 because he had all the splash plays. He had 6 interceptions. He had 6 this year, but he had 6 in 12 games that year. He was making plays all over the place, but he was also missing coverages. He wasn't the greatest tackler. He improved that part of his game. This guy wasn't, he was consistent from week 1 through the Super Bowl. Is he going to have the same type of year? Probably not. But is he going to be a bad player? No. He's going to be a top 10 linebacker because he's just too good. And yeah, I'm paying that. And how he better pay it. And I think he knows he has to pay it. You're muted, Zander.
Got to be interesting to see what happens there. Sasha R., thank you, brother. We appreciate that. Super chat, good stuff there. John, just looking at some of the list, all right, of the other names, and I just want to rattle off a couple of them to you and see kind of where you stand. We talked about Kenny Gainwell. I don't anticipate he'll be back. You look at guys a little bit further down the roster, Britton Covey, Ben Van Sumeren, Isaiah Rodgers, Jack Driscoll, Oren Burks, Fred Johnson, Raven Clark, but he's older. I don't see it with him. Any of those names you think that will be returning here? You know, Ben Van Sumeren's an interesting one. Isaiah Rodgers is an interesting one.
Well,
Oren
number
Burks,
one,
I think, is an interesting one with Nakobe Dean's injury.
Yeah, Oren Burks, I would say. There's different. I mean, there's unrestricted. Like Britton's restricted.
Restricted, right? And Ben is I think
Ben is exclusive.
Right? Yeah.
So Ben's going to be back. There's no issues. Restricted as far as, you know, Britton Covey, he's going to be unrestricted because they're not going to tender him coming off the injury, unfortunately, for Britton. So he will eventually become unrestricted. But of the guys, you know, Kenny and Oren, I would say lead the second level. And I will say this about Kenny Gainwell. Nick Sirianni loves him. Jalen Hurts loves him. So that's me.
And Howie loves him, I think.
I think everybody loves him. I think the organization loves him. But at the same time, he's not going to play a lot here with Saquon, understandably. So he probably wants to go somewhere to have a bigger opportunity, but he hasn't really proved himself to a degree where somebody's going to pay a lot of money at a position people don't pay a lot of money to.
Yeah.
So he might be back just from that standpoint, but I would lean against it. I'd be under 50% just because he probably wants the chance to play a little bit more would be my guess.
It's a
And
shame 'cause
then
I'm looking for a guy. I'm looking for a little bit of a backup running back who can have a bigger role next year. To simply because I don't think you want Saquon Barkley having that many touches again. So I don't know. Has Kenny Gainwell earned that level of a contract? If I'm not going to go Lions level where you have Jameer and David, but maybe a little bit of a lesser extent to what they do there, and get a guy that can take some of those snaps away. Kenny didn't take them away this year. I don't think he's going to take them away next year.
no, I don't think he's going to take him away, and I don't think anybody's going to take him away. I don't think
You
that
don't think they're
player
going to go with
exists.
that double running back
No,
style?
no. They're going to run Saquon Barkley. They proved that this year they'll manage him during the week. I asked this question to Nick. Upside down is very consistent with it. Their load management happens during the week. He did nothing in practice for basically the second half of the season.
Right.
And on game day, if they need him, that's one of those things I always get the Fletcher Cox stuff. Jim Schwartz used to say that all the time. We got to get some reps off Fletcher Cox. And then you get in the game and you need them to win the game.
Right. It's hard to take him out.
Yeah.
Man. Hard to take
And that's
him
the
out.
thing. Nobody's taking snaps away from Saquon Barkley. If he's healthy, he's playing. And
Well, a couple weeks, a couple months, a month or two ago, you called Jahmyr Gibbs the best running back in football, or one of them, and I agree with you.
Yeah, he's one of them, but
you got
it's different.
taken away from him because they have the right setup in terms of, Sonic and Knuckles, I guess, as they call it.
Yeah. Well, but different is he, because I'm talking about well-rounded, Jim, one of the things about Gibbs is, good luck covering him. Saquon's not that guy in the passing game, but as a runner, Saquon's much more equipped to handle 800 carries like he had this year than Jahmyr Gibbs is. So they need more of with Saquon, it's guys built like brick. He's 230. He can take the pounding. Now, eventually, everybody gets beat up.
Right.
And again, what are we talking about though here? They signed him to a 3-year deal. If you get 3 years out of Saquon Barkley at the level he played last year, and it's similar to Zach Bond, he's not going to have the season he had this year. It's almost impossible. He had the best rushing season in NFL history. You think he's going to break his own record next year? The odds are not good on that. I think a lot of people are probably fired up about it, but the odds are not good on that. So you run him as much as you can and till the wheels fall off. That's the ugly part of football. Nobody's taking away reps from Saquon Barkley. No, that's just not going to happen.
Do you think the Eagles will reward Saquon Barkley with a restructured contract this offseason?
They might do something just from a PR standpoint, but maybe guarantee some of the money in the third year.
Yeah,
I'd have to look at the contract. They might do something, but it's
I thought they might do something, and like you just said, add some guaranteed money that third year, maybe give him a little bit of a bonus of some sort. I don't know. I know Howie likes to look. One of the things I think that Howie's done really well recently is this is a business, and players want to get paid. Players want to be taken care of. So I think Howie's done a good job at showing the rest of the league. If you produce in Philly, if you're a good player, if you are a leader in our locker room, if you do things right here, you get rewarded here. And I wouldn't surprise me if Howie did something like that for Saquon, but I know it's a reach with the running back.
Yeah, unfortunately, I agree with you. He might do something like that, but it's not going to be significant. They're not going to extend him by 5 years or they might give him some more incentives just to make him a little bit happier. you know, his contract's already massive from a running back perspective. You could argue he should be the highest paid running back. I don't know how you get him there, but like I said, he's already got. So I'm looking at, you know, his third year is pretty much insignificant.
Yeah, it's basically an added year, right? No, is there even any guaranteed money in that year?
There's the potential outs, obviously, as most contracts with Howie it's this season after this season, but and that was and you have 4 Boyd years on top of it, so that's what the Eagles do. They might put an extra year on this deal with a bunch of guaranteed money to make him happy. Might. So that wouldn't surprise me. And you have the 4 Boyd years at the end.
Yeah, we'll see what they end up doing there with Saquon Barkley. I thought it was an interesting one. John, we'll get to our first commercial break. I do want to thank Fly Eagles Fly for becoming a member. Fly Eagles Fly, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Or woman, whoever you are, I appreciate that very much. Thanks for becoming a member, supporting the channel. We'll have a giveaway today on the show, after the show. All right, I got a Saquon Barkley Super Bowl patch jersey. All right, so we'll be giving that away. So if you're not a member,
how many Saquon jerseys have we given away this year? Do we have an official total?
What? A lot more than what we predicted at the start of the year with, you know, going over the 120.
125 I thought was pretty significant. Turns out,
but that wasn't the only way I gave away a jersey. I bought like 50 jerseys. I've had like 80 winners, John, on the channel this year. So we've given away a lot of stuff. It's good. Rashid Mixon checks in. How does 4 years, $50 million deal for Bond, draft defensive tackle, edge, the first 2 picks, sign a sack mercenary to a 1-year deal, set for Steen and Ringo, and round out the rest of the draft sound? Well, Rashid, that sounds perfect, man. If everything goes exactly according to plan, but I don't know if it all works. It doesn't normally all work out that good, Rashid. But John, your thoughts on that?
Say that again. My mouse just died on me, so I was trying to figure that out. But say that again.
You guys got a dead mouse over there.
I got a dead mouse.
Johnny Max.
We got to go to a break so I can get a battery.
All right, I'll get to a break. Rashid says, how does 4 years, $50 million deal sit for Bond? Draft a defensive tackle on the edge with your first 2 picks. Sign a sack mercenary to a 1-year deal. Set for Steen and Ringo, and round out the rest of the draft.
Well, yeah. Let me get to the break and I'll get back to that. That's a lot of stuff.
Sounds like the perfect offseason, man. Yeah. Sounds like the perfect offseason there. It doesn't normally all work out that good, Rashid, but we'll see how it all plays out. Let's get to our commercial break. Johnny Mac struggling over there with the mouse. I'll get to a break here. I appreciate it.
I gotta keep that straight. There's like 15 things there, so I gotta get it right.
Oh, yeah, it's on your tabs and stuff. All right, everybody, let's hit that like button for us. We appreciate all of you guys for watching and got a good crowd in here today. Let me tell you guys about the great people at BetUS, and then we will get to our commercial break. I'm losing my voice from that parade. It hit me late. You know, Saturday and Sunday I was all good, and then Monday I woke up and my voice is all messed up. Tuesday, here we are, still the same thing. Go check them out, everybody. You can see the promo code on your screen. It's BetUS. Go to betus.com.pa, and the promo code is YouTube150. Gives you a 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit, and you get 125% on your second and third deposit, all up to $2,000. So deposit less and bet with more at BetUS. Go to betus.com.pa. That's betus.com.pa, and use that promo code YouTube150. We appreciate all you guys tuning in. We'll be right back on Birds 365.
The following is a real testimony.